Okay, basically we are in designing well actually we already designed the part, which is the phone holder, but we're going to render it. So basically to rendering, I would recommend using 3D modeling. We go to our render tab. Hopefully it opens up. There's a few options here. Lights, we'll get more into that next week. Shadows, I will actually have a shadow. So we create a ground shadow. You can see it gives you a shadow at the bottom. Gives you a nice texture. I guys can't see on that screen. That's there. Might have to turn the floor black. Yeah. What I'm going to create is I'm going to create a platform so I can leave this item so I can render it on a platform. That way it looks even better. So I'm going to design a line across the bottom of the object, making sure that it's completely set. And I'm going to stretch it out so it overlaps both ways of the object. And I'm going to do extrude. Extrude it down, make sure your UCX are in the right coordinate system, otherwise you're going to be going upwards instead of creating a platform from the bottom. I have that, I can move it over. Yes. That usually comes up because it's a surface, so it's complicated and it may freeze the computer. Gotta delete that reference line, no longer need that, and I end up with something like this. If I need to, I can also extend it out if it's too small, but it can only get extended from one side, which is okay because I can just move it over. But we have something like this. So I have two objects, and to get started with rendering, what you want to do is go to your render tab up here. We got the ground shadows on. Technically, we're not going to use the sun status. What it does is it creates a sun based on a coordinate on the world and a time and date. So it's usually used for architects when they're trying to design a house or where windows should be located during winter and summer and so forth. Our basic render setup right here is medium, which you want to keep, especially if your computer can't handle too much processing graphics. This can go up to presentation. So for medium, it goes from there's low, draft, high, and this presentation. You can go medium if you're a little afraid about your computer. You can even go low. To this properties menu for rendering, what I did was I clicked down this arrow here where it goes into the advanced rendering settings. Here it specifies what happens when you render. So if we stretch that out, procedure, the view we're currently in is what it will render. So you can crop something or you can select an object. So in case you have a big complex object and you want to just crop something, some small area that you want to see rendered, you can do that with crop. So you select crop and you can create a little crop once you press render. You can also do a select where you select an object. At this point I would recommend leaving it at view. We'll work with that. And the destination is where the file creates the render. So either it can be on the screen, which is okay if you do want to do a quick render, but if you want to save your work and see your previous renderings, I recommend doing a window. So it creates a whole complex window. I think it's that way. So before we get going into this, I want to actually put some material on the object so we can actually see how these things work. So for render, you can go to Browse Materials Browser. Once you select that, usually you have a standard setup of colors, materials, so forth. Each one is established to its own parameters. If you need to add your own, you can do that, but it's complicated. You can adjust the ones you have currently to make it fit your needs. So if you want a ceramic to be more translucent for some reason, you can do that, and you could change anything else. You can also bring in graphics or textures from anywhere, take a picture of it and bring it in and set up your own material, which actually is down here. You can start material. So I'm going to create a floor color for this, since it almost looks like a chair at the same time it's a phone holder. I'm going to create what are we gonna do? Mosaic blue. So you select that, you drag it, and you can see a plus sign. It gets placed on that area. Now, there's other options. What you can do is you can actually select parts of a object that can be rendered. You don't have to render the whole thing. You can select the actual face. And all you have to do is hold Control to do that. So at this point, I'm going to create a metallic paint. This one's going to be red. I'm going to select it and make this red. And then for experimental reasons and to explain how that control works, I'm going to use, actually, yeah, that should be fine. Magenta, drag it, hold Control, and it selects that face. Now I'm going to have to do the other side also, because it's a two-face area. Again, select Magenta, hold Control, and select that face. So when I render it, it should be 3 different colors here. And there's actually a material list up here. If I scroll this out, this is all the materials I've been using. For some reason I used 2 materials for magenta. I think I selected them separately. But these are a type, there's names, it gives you a preview. If you like, you can double click, get a better view. You can modify each one to your own liking. So your image, what it's being used, the color, image fade, glossiness, highlights, so it's metallic. Some of those you can't change, some you can. I can't really explain what, fade means exactly. I'm not going to go into that. You have to play around with these to get a feel of an understanding of what each item does. Transparency makes it like glass if you want it. Cutouts, I think that just establishes a part of an image into it. Self-illumination, which is actually pretty good because then it kind of lights up by itself a little bit and creates a more clean look. If you look at your some of the paperwork I added on to this week, you'll have a better explanation on these parts, including tint. So there's information on the part, so you could label it as you wish, and its location is specified here. Okay, so we have that. I'm going to minimize this or actually close this out. You can see there's a lot of different textures, material you can use. And of course you can add your own. Close that out for now. And we're at medium right now. So in a view, we have a window, so it's going to create a window. The output size, that's going to be the size of the actual graphic, which you can save in JPG, PNG, and a lot of different formats. So you can click render here, where it's going to start rendering. Don't worry about this information, or actually, might I click that? Oops, there we go. Rendered that. So it's rendering. So I did a mosaic on the floor. I did a nice magenta inside, and I did that red on the outside. So you have something like that. Now the thing about, and this is the window that it created, and you can save the work. You can zoom in, and I think it's, yeah, file, save a copy, or you save it. And when you do so, you have these options for the formats. I recommend JPEG. It's one of the easiest programs to open with. You can open it with Paint on Windows. It also specifies all this information on the material, on the parts here. So when it was created, that's how many lines. Don't worry about that. The size, that may be an issue if you're sending it to some clients. You don't want it too big, so you may want to change the actual file output size down, or you can go into Paint and reduce your image. Sample 1, okay, shadows. So you can see the shadow, and it does, and the mosaic actually reflects the object, so that's why you see the bottom. Light is set at 1, visual, processing. Okay, so that's the first one I just created. Now I can modify it by creating new material on it, or I can actually go in a different view that I prefer better. Actually, I'm okay with the view that I have right now, but I'm going to change this to a green color and then render it once more. Again, I'm at medium, so it doesn't get too complex and doesn't take too long to render. But sometimes you will have, I had students that render projects for 24 hours. And sometimes it crashes in that 24 hours, so just giving you guys a heads up, that will happen. The issue about when you're placing a material on a face alone, once you create a material and place the material on a full part again, that face will automatically return back to its normal, to the new color that you decided. So in this, when I did the render, I'll just show that to you guys. I no longer have that magenta inside of the heart. It's all green. Shadows there, it's all green. So that's an issue. If you want to do that, you have to make sure you work out that problem. Okay, so if you want that image to be bigger and closer, what you want to do is zoom in. Even though the object is not completely visible on your screen, the rendering is actually the size of your actual physical screen, I believe, or even bigger than that. So you got to play around with the zooming in. So as you can see, I zoomed in and I see a lot more than what I see on my actual screen. At my screen, I can't even see the heart. Here, I can fully see the heart and more. But here is what I was talking about. There are 4 different files. You can hover between these from the original to your first render, second render, third render. So you get quite an experience of seeing what changes you made, what you prefer, what you don't like. You can save a few of them. You can play around. And then once you're perfectly set with the rendering that you want, you can, before you do this, actually, you should be saving your work, but you can even go up to presentation and hit render, which will take a lot longer. Depends on your drawing, how sophisticated it is, and how many materials you have. But it will always take longer, but it has like somewhat of a better visual view. So we can compare what we have now is this and what we had before. Okay, it looks pretty much the same. So sometimes, actually, yeah, presentation, you get render presence. Sometimes it makes a huge difference, sometimes it doesn't. I guess at this point, it didn't make any difference almost, unless my eyes are not what they used to be. Anyways, we can also change the, okay, so basically we have view, crop is another one, where when you click render, it's going to ask you to crop out an area. So you did not show me the render. I'm just going to draw a square, and that square is going to be rendered. So it's a good, like a preview of what you're going to have. So if you have a very complex part and you only want to see a segment of it and see the new color layout, that's what you would do. The other option is select. So if you move, actually, once you have that crop, if you move a little bit, you will lose it. So keep that in mind. Select is when you select actual object when you're rendering. So it's going to ask me to select an object now. Let's say I'm just going to select the floor. And click enter. You can select more than one object, of course. And it's going to render, which it's going to take forever because I forgot the floor is so big. So it's actually going pretty slow. Look at that. You can escape sometimes. Hopefully it doesn't freeze the computer. That's not going to let me go. Maybe I should pause. So that was basically the 3 options here. That's why I always prefer the view that I'm working in. Just saves the hassle. You have to just zoom to that location that you want to see. Viewport it creates a viewport just like you saw when I did the. Actually, I'll show it again. So I have view, viewport. When I do render, it does the screen. Oh, why did I do this? It does what the screen shows, which takes forever. Come on, pause, pause, pause. Uh-oh. Oh no. I need to pause the video. And my computer's probably working. So once I moved, I lost everything. So that's why I don't like viewport. It takes longer, somewhat. And once you click it, you can't escape. Wow. Anyways, okay, so the other ones are automatic. Don't worry about that. That is way advanced unless you really want to play around with renderings to expert level where you know Photoshop and you know these technical terms. I don't recommend playing with them. Sizing, that's pretty easy. Physical scale, you can scale the object down. Material, you usually want that on. That's why you place the material on it. Texture filtering, you want that on, I guess. I mean, it's if you turn it off, you'll see a difference. But I always have it on. Default is usually a good choice for most applications. Force two sides, not quite sure what that means. All right, and then we now go to the next step, sampling. I would leave that as is because you don't want to change that. Shadows, they're simple. You can go into sorted and segmented. I would do each one, but I think the computer would not. Actually, we can try each one if I zoom in close enough, because this is where our shadow is. So we saw our first standard shadow. Oh, wait. Ah. Thanks. Forgot I was on viewport. So. Come on, come on. Ah, wrong one. Come on. Four. But they weren't made for these applications. All right. So what I have to go back to, I have to change this to window because viewport kills me, and I have a presentation, which even makes it even worse. So I'll do medium. We can go back to learning about the other options. So our other conversation was about shadows. Right now we have it simple. So if I do the render, I'm going to do all three because I can give you a comparison on the output file name. So there's three of them set up here. So that's a simple shadow. Next one will be the sorted. Same thing almost. And segmented. And they all look the same.
That's because you don't have a light on.
Yeah, that's what I just realized. So with the light on, it will be completely different. Guess we'll have to wait till next week to do that. I still keep it on because I like seeing a shadow. Race tracing, it's pretty complex. It's going to really slow down your computer. We're not going to even test that out because I know it's going to crash this one. Diagnostics, everything else pretty much you leave. I would not recommend changing or playing around with unless you know exactly what you're doing. Just wanted to give you guys a basic understanding of rendering. So that gives us that. What else can we do here? Let me pause this for a sec. So now, basically, what I forgot to do is turn on the materials textures. I should have had it on. That way it shows you the textures in the back, especially for material that has texture. If it's just a solid color, it does not create texture. So if we render it now, we can compare it to what it was before. but this helps you turn on the creates, tells you that what material has what on it. Where's that viewport? Uh-oh. Okay, so that's not good. Let's go here. Window. Oh, that's why there we go. That was done. No. That doesn't tell me what time it was done. Alright, well, I'll close that out for now. And if your computer can't do this, you might want to turn this off because sometimes it does slow down the computer. Again. And let's do this. What our next option is from ground shadow, which is one of the options. There's no shadow, and there's a full shadow, which will create a shadow from the position you're in. So if we render it now, there we go. It's working. We would need the lights. Again, one of those things that won't work without the other. So we'll leave that as for now. Render properties, we went over that. Viewports, that. Alright, so that concludes a little bit about rendering. I'll get more into it next.